First, they supposedly fed him enough cyanide to kill 5 men. He ate the poisoned cakes, drank the toxic wine, and then, legend has it, he simply asked for more. Okay, so poison didn't work. Next up, they shot him right in the chest. He collapses, and it looks like it's all over. But no. As his assassins are about to leave, the story goes he leaps to his feet, roaring like some kind of wild animal.
So the chase is on, they hunt him down in a frozen courtyard, shoot him again, and then just beat him with a club until he's nothing but a bloody, motionless heap in the snow. Brutal.
But even that wasn't enough. Just to be absolutely sure, they wrap his body up, drive him to a bridge, and chuck him into the freezing Malayan Neva River. And after all that, they figured he finally died from drowning.
So that right there, that is the legendary death of Grigori Rasputin. It's this incredible tale of a superhuman monster who just refused to die. But here's the thing. What if it's not the whole truth? In this explainer, we're going to dig into the hard evidence, the actual autopsy of the man, to perform an autopsy on the myth itself.
So this incredible story, where did it even come from? Well, we have to start with the main source, the tale as told by the guy who claimed to pull the first trigger, the incredibly wealthy Prince Felix Yusupov.
Picture this. It's December 30th, 1916. Rasputin is lured into this lavish cellar in Yusupov's Moika Palace. And later, Yusupov would write this absolutely terrifying, almost cinematic account of a man who just would not die.
What's so wild about Yusupov's version is how perfectly it's laid out, almost like a movie script. You know, step 1, the cyanide fails spectacularly. Step 2, a direct shot to the chest. Step 3, the dead body miraculously comes back to life. Step 4, he gets shot twice more while running away. And then finally, step 5, they dump him in an icy river. See, in this telling of the story, Yusupov isn't just some murderer. He's the hero, slaying an unkillable, unholy demon.
Okay, so Yusupov's story is incredible, almost literally unbelievable. So what happens when we put his story up against, actual science? What did the real autopsy, performed by Professor Dmitry Kosaratov, have to say? And that's really the core question, isn't it? When we take this sensational myth and stack it up against the cold, hard facts, a very different picture starts to emerge. And this is where the prince's whole story just completely falls apart. The official autopsy report pretty much contradicts him on every single key point. So, Yusupov claims there was a massive dose of cyanide. The autopsy finds, quote, no trace of poison. He says Rasputin was shot while fleeing. Well, the autopsy reveals a contact shot to the forehead, meaning the gun was pressed right up against his skin. And the cause of death? Yusupov insisted it was drowning, but the evidence showed Rasputin was already dead long before he ever hit the water. Probably the most damning piece of evidence, though, is a post-mortem photograph. It shows this clean, lethal gunshot wound smack in the center of the forehead. And if you look closely, you can actually see the muzzle imprint from the gun being pressed against his skin. This wasn't some chaotic chase. This was an execution. I mean, think about it. You just can't give someone that kind of wound while they're running away from you in the dark.
Okay, so if the story was a complete fabrication, you have to ask why. Why make up such an elaborate tale? What were the real motives going on here?
Yusupov, naturally, claimed he had the noblest of reasons. He was saving Mother Russia from Rasputin's supposedly corrupting influence over the Tsar and Tsarina. But Rasputin's own daughter, Maria, she offered a completely different and way more scandalous theory. She claimed the whole thing was an act of personal revenge after her father rejected Prince Yusupov's homosexual advances.
But wait, there's a third theory, and this one points to a shadowy international player, British intelligence, MI6. What was their motive? Well, Britain was absolutely terrified that Rasputin would convince Russia to sign a separate peace treaty with Germany, a move that could have cost the Allies World War I. And the evidence? It's pretty compelling. A British agent, a guy named Oswald Rayner, who happened to be a friend of Yusupov's, was in the palace that night. The fatal forehead wound? It seems to have been made by a .455 Weebly. That's a British-made revolver, the same kind Rayner owned. And get this, the autopsy found bullets from 3 different caliber revolvers, which confirms there were at least 3 shooters involved. To really get why so many powerful people might want Rasputin out of the picture, we need to take a quick step back and understand who this guy actually was. I mean, how did an illiterate peasant get so incredibly close to the throne?
All right, first things first, let's clear up a huge misconception. Rasputin was not a mad monk. He never had any official position in the church. He was what's known as a starets, which is sort of a spiritual advisor or a holy man. He was literally an illiterate peasant from Siberia who built this reputation as a mystic and a healer.
And his rise was just meteoric. He shows up in St. Petersburg in 1903, and by 1905, he's being introduced to the royal family. He very quickly makes himself indispensable to the Tsarina Alexandra because he had this uncanny, mysterious ability to stop the bleeding of her young son Alexei, who had hemophilia. So by the time the Tsar left for the front lines of World War I, Rasputin's influence over the government acting through the Tsarina was absolute. And as you can imagine, this made him a lot of very powerful enemies.
So that brings us back to the big question. Why has Yusupov's wild, fantastic story, the one we started with, stuck around for over a century, even when there's so much forensic evidence that completely debunks it?
You know, the answer is actually pretty simple. It was just a better story. A cold-blooded execution in a basement, that's not heroic. But by painting Rasputin as this indestructible demonic villain, Yusupov totally transformed a political assassination into an epic struggle of good versus evil. He wasn't just killing a man. He was mythologizing himself as the savior of an entire empire.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. When we look back at the past, how much of what we call history is actually a record of what happened? And how much of it is just the story that was too good not to be told?